Hey guys, Trevor Chikuta here from SpineWise. Today I want to talk to you about something a little bit different. That is, if you get pain in your hands when you're riding, possible reasons for it and what you can do to help it. If you're loving our series, please like our page, subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, please share it with your friends and family. It's the easiest way we have of getting information out there and helping more people just like you. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about hand pain and why this actually occurs. Because there's a whole lot of different reasons about why hand pain occurs when you're riding, especially on a road bike, and what you can do to actually eliminate that. So we're going to start with something quite specific to begin with, and that is the position of your hands themselves. So the traditional position for brake levers, or the things that you hold onto, if you're not familiar with terms, but the position for the brake levers themselves traditionally is in a vertical position. So they mount them so that they're perfectly upright. In that upright position, it's great because it helps keep your arms externally rotated, which keeps your back engaged, opens up your chest and allows you to breathe properly. The big problem when you have your hands directly straight is it tends to create a level of what we call radial deviation. So we tend to induce this in the hands themselves when we're riding and we're resting on the hands. And that puts tension and weight on a small bone in your wrist called your pisiform, which is this fella down here. We tend to load this guy down here. The problem with doing that is that there's actually a really important nerve that passes up from here through that and then supplies the hand itself, especially that outside of the hand, this area through here. So when we keep loading it, what we often end up happening is with what we call pisiform hamate syndromes, or more or less irritation to the ulnar nerve. And this can be often misconstrued as being carpal tunnel syndrome, which it isn't. It's a slightly different variation on it, and there's tons of videos on our site. You can have a look at the playlist on the wrist and hand pains where I've spoken about the difference between radius and, between ulnar and median nerve wrist problems. So this one's a really, really simple one to fix. So we take that traditional straight position and all we do is just rotate it inwards just ever so slightly. We're not trying to aim at this angle, but we want to take the hand from this position and just create about a 5 to 10 degree rotation inwards, just slightly inwards. And what that'll do is actually start loading the front of your palmar surface of your hand as opposed to the lateral surface of the hand. And this is kind of what we can see here, where we see this one here, the hand is very vertical in its position, where here we've got that slight tilt in, what we call pronation, that slight amount of pronation coming in, and a lot of the manufacturers are now starting to build this into their brake levers directly, that little bit of pronation, to try and unload that small area of the wrist. So this is a nice easy one, just that little bit of tilt in makes a huge difference. Some of the more high-end road bars themselves now, when you look at your drops that come down, will actually have a lateral flare where they're coming out, and you can almost align it up perfectly with that lateral flare, and that will give you the angle that you're looking for as well, just to unload that other aspect of the wrist. Okay, if we move along now and we start looking more broadly about the weight and pressure in your hands themselves, we take our fruit cyclist here. What we want to look at is what are the reasons why we could be putting excessive amount of weight on your hands. So the first one is the obvious, and that is that your body position is too far forward. Now what I mean by that is not necessarily that your body position is too far forward from an anterior position of where you sit in relation to the pedals, but more so to do with your center of gravity, whether your center of gravity is somewhat balanced on the bike or whether it's shifted forward. One of the big causes of center of gravity movements forward is actually saddle position. So if we have a saddle and that saddle is on a slight downward angle like that, you'll naturally slide forward on it, which will push your body weight this way and end up with more weight on your hands. So it's really, really important to make sure your saddle is level and that we don't have a slight tilt. I know there was a couple of time trial bikes or TT brands going back about maybe 10 years ago now that had ratchet mechanisms in their seats, which meant that actually you couldn't actually get the saddle level, which was a real problem for a lot of cyclists all around the world. So we want to make sure that that is perfectly level to ensure that we have that nice even balance. So that's the first one we want to look at. Second one, if we start looking through measurements, and I don't want to get too hooked up on measurements, because every time that we start talking about measurements, there's always changes and exemptions to those rules. But one of the things we want to see, if we draw a nice line going through the person and then draw another line going through their arm here, what we should be seeing is this angle here is somewhere around the 90-degree mark, maybe slightly a little bit more open than that, but we want to be pretty close to the 90 to 100 degrees in that opening area. We don't want to be beyond that. So when we start getting too opened up, when we start getting too far out this way, we're going to create a lot of reach issues. Weight is going to go again for further forward, and the result of that is going to be excessive weight on our hands. And whilst we're coming here and we start looking further forward, there's also then a ratio between the stem height, which is where the handlebars come from, and the seat, and we need to make sure that that is adequate for you. For a lot of people, their stem height is way too low. They try and get really fit. They're trying to get really fast. They want to be more aerodynamic, so they drop their stem, their bars all the way down, and doing so, they bring their body weight forward once again, which loads up the hands. So some of you might be aware that we now have what we call a compact geometry bike, which is where the top tube is a little bit shorter, which was really made famous by Giant with their TCR system. And by doing that, that little bit of bringing this together gives you a little bit more of an upright posture, which helps take relief from that and allows a lot of riders to ride a lot more comfortably, as opposed to your high-end aero-based frames, which can be quite spread out. So if this area here, if your stem starts dropping too far down and the handlebars get too low, again, all the weight comes further forward and we load these up as well. The other thing we need to be aware of with all this as well is the lower we go at the front, or the more spread out we become, the more workload we put on the core and on your pelvic floor as well. So we need to make sure that we have that stability in place, and we need to make sure if you're riding that you're riding within your means. Even if you're on a time trial bike, on a TT, and you're hooked up in that aero position, it can actually be faster for you in the long run to raise your bars up a little bit, get a little bit less aero, conserve some energy if your core isn't, or your pelvic floor isn't up to that kind of positioning, and in doing so you'll be more comfortable, which allows you to put more power out for longer periods of time, which in the end, especially when you start talking about 50, 60, 100 plus Ks, can actually result in you having a much faster time being able to maintain that position for longer periods as well. Alright, so there's a few quick tips in order to try and reduce the numbness and the pain in your hands. So the first one, make sure your brake levers are actually slightly tilted in to take the pressure off that ulnar nerve. Make sure your saddle is straight. We don't want and level. We don't want it to be tilted down or tilted up. Make sure that your stem height is at a height that you can actually cope with. We don't want to be too far forward, all that. Make sure the angle through this area is nice around the 90-degree mark, maybe a little bit further open. And if all that is still causing you problems, then look at your hands themselves. What are you wearing? So sometimes the vibration from especially some of the new high-end road frames, that vibration can actually create problems with wrists as well, shaking them up. So using gel pads or gloves that have really good grips and padding in them can sometimes help take the pressure off that pisiform area, unload the wrist a little bit, and make your riding so much more comfortable. So anyway guys, if you have any questions about it all, please just post them up. Feel free to email me about any of those things. We've kind of tried to breeze over a lot of this stuff. So some of the guys who are interested in from more higher end compared to some of the guys who are interested in lower end, just getting started cycling, can both get some information out of this. Whether you're just starting out or whether you've been riding for 10 years and you're now at a high level, wrist problems are a very common problem for cyclists who don't have their setups right and don't have those supporting structures and ride beyond their means in terms of what their core can support. So if you do have any questions, please post them up. Feel free to get in contact with me if you have any other questions in regards to your riding. Hope you're enjoying this series. And if you do have any problems in any way, shape or forms, please just reach out to me. Both myself and my team are always here to help you whenever we can and ever you need it. Anyway guys, until the next vid, bye for now.